No one in that cold reception area could explain what they saw. The sound of the elevator doors closing still echoed through the hallways when the lights flickered, as if the building were breathing, swallowing everything inside. It was less than 10 seconds between the moment he stepped in and the absolute silence that spread like a nighttime fever, a silence that would leave marks for much longer than 2 hours. The cameras didn't show screams, shoves, or any sign of struggle. Just a tired man, eyes downcast, pressing the button for a floor no one ever confirmed. And then nothing. The digital pointer stopped at a non-existent floor, as if the hospital had invented a level just to swallow secrets no one should find. At the reception desk, the phone rang in a loop. Discharge requests, lost visitors, children. Running through the corridors. No one noticed that the elevator never opened again on that floor. No one questioned why the emergency button kept blinking, insistent, invisible to eyes too busy to see a silent call for help. The nurse who swore she saw the door open took back her statement. Said she must have confused it with another elevator. But there was no other one. The recordings made it clear. It was always the same. A metal box that closed its doors and devoured anyone who dared step in with too many questions in their head. Hours later, a security guard was rewinding the tapes. The blue glow of the monitor reflected in deep dark circles under his eyes. He rewound, fast-forwarded, paused, and nothing. No image of the man leaving. No body, no bag. No trace. Just the digital pointer marking the floor that didn't exist on the control panel. The janitor, an old man with a patchy beard, said he had seen this before. That the building, before it was a hospital, had been a hotel that closed down. Because of a fire. He spoke in a rough whisper, as if afraid of waking the walls. They said it was the madness of someone who spends the whole night scrubbing floors. But those who cleaned blood that never came out knew more than they let on. On the 7th floor, which wasn't the 7th, there was a door locked from the inside. No one had the key for years. Whoever tried to break it down never came back. Whoever ordered it open was transferred far away. The old medical records got lost during a wing relocation. But everything that disappeared there, sooner or later, came back knocking on the door. The family arrived 2 hours later. They wanted to know where he was. The nurse swallowed hard. The security guard scratched his neck. They called the supervisor, who brought a cup of coffee that got cold before any answer came up. The man's cell phone rang inside his backpack. 3 missed calls. 1 unanswered message. They say that in that hospital, whoever disappears never really vanishes. They stay trapped inside the walls, breathing through the air ducts, whispering secrets to those who insist on staying after visiting hours. A new doctor swore he heard footsteps inside the closed elevator. But no one believed him. The front gate camera caught a strange image. The elevator doors opening by themselves at 3 in the morning. No body came out. But a shadow, too tall to be human, crossed the lobby without turning on the lights. It vanished into the wing where the corridors have no windows. The recording froze there. When they tried to show it to the police, the file got corrupted. The IT technician gave up trying to recover it. Said it was a virus. The janitor standing behind him slowly shook his head. It wasn't a virus. It was a warning. And whoever doesn't understand warnings ends up becoming part of the floor. No one cleans. 2 nurses resigned that week. Said they couldn't take the nightmares anymore. They were sure the elevator opened by itself when no one was there to call it. And every time the door opened, the cold wind brought a whisper no one could understand. A mother, sitting in the hallway, heard the door open while she slept waiting for her son. She swore she saw someone standing inside, waving for her to come in. When she really woke up, the elevator was empty. And her son cried, feverish, pointing at the ceiling as if he saw someone stuck up there. The head of security checked all the keys. locked the elevator access during the night. Still, the cameras showed the doors opening by themselves. A button lit up. An impossible floor blinked on the digital display. And no one had the courage to press stop. In the morgue, an old file appeared under a drawer that was never used. A crossed-out name. A time that matched the disappearance. No one could explain how that file ended up there. But the paper was damp, as if someone had cried on it. The janitor swept the hallway and said nothing there was coincidence. Whoever vanishes in the elevator comes back when someone asks the wrong question. And each question opens a door that should have stayed locked forever. On the 8th day, a new patient asked to change rooms. She couldn't sleep well. Said that every night she heard the elevator bell ring, but no one answered. When she opened the door to look, she swore she saw a hand waving. The maintenance technicians isolated the equipment, shut off the power. And even so, the button lit up at dawn. The digital display blinked the same non-existent floor. The sound of the motor rising echoed as if someone was coming back from inside. An anonymous letter arrived at administration. 3 lines handwritten. He is not lost, he is waiting. No signature, no fingerprints, no clue who sent it. But the letter smelled like hospital, and the smoke of something that didn't burn completely. Doctors stopped using the elevator alone. Now, whenever they need to go up, they go in pairs. But still, someone always says they feel a cold hand between theirs. A presence that seems to be there to guide, or to pull back whoever dares get too curious. An external security camera caught a disturbing image. At 3:12 a.m., the elevator door opened, but what came out had no face. Just an elongated shadow, as if made of a void that swallows the air. The doorman never came back to work. A nurse found an ID badge on the floor near the elevator door. The name was erased, but the photo was clear. The face of someone no one remembers hiring. When they tried to check the records, the system crashed. They restarted everything. The file didn't exist. In the isolation wing, they say they hear voices through the intercom. Calls coming from the elevator. Weak, scratched pleas for help, as if the call crossed concrete and steel to reach whoever still has the courage to answer. In the basement, the generators make a noise that sounds like breathing. Sometimes people passing down there say they hear knocking, as if someone were banging on the elevator shaft wall, begging to be let out. But no one opens. No one risks it. An old doctor, about to retire, looked at the elevator and said it wasn't just a machine. It was a corridor where everything the hospital hides can no longer come back. Whoever presses the button also presses their own fate. In the break room, the story turned into legend. But whoever listens stays silent, because whoever talks too much one day presses the button by accident and discovers it's not the elevator that goes up or down. It's whoever steps in that never comes back the same. Outside, no one believes it. They say it's gossip, an unresolved case. But inside, everyone knows. Every door click is a warning. And every dark floor is a hungry mouth. They say that on some nights, the door opens, and someone whispers the name of whoever vanished. And then, the hallway swallows the sound, and everything goes back to normal. At least until someone asks, would you have the courage to press the button? The morning after the disappearance, the entire hospital seemed to breathe heavier. The sound of heart monitors echoed through empty hallways, like a cruel reminder that not every life inside those walls could be saved. Near the elevator, a yellow cone blocked the door no one had the courage to open. But behind the maintenance sign, someone had stuck a crumpled note. Careful what you look for. No one admitted to writing it, but the glue was still fresh when the supervisor ordered it torn down. The oldest security guard on the night shift stared at the elevator display like someone facing a mirror that hides cracks. He'd seen people disappear from shifts before, but they always came back. Drunks who locked themselves in the bathroom, confused patients who got lost in the corridors. But this was different. There was no trace. No noise, no cry for help. Just a camera that kept showing that, once the doors closed, the world inside stopped following the rules. The janitor swept the polished floor without taking his eyes off the cone. From time to time, he stopped, rested the broom handle on his shoulder, and listened. He said he could hear the motor creaking in a strange way, as if something heavy were pulling the cables from inside. He mentioned this to the maintenance chief, who just shrugged and laughed softly. But that same night, the same chief was seen, standing in front of the closed door, his hand hovering over the call button, hesitating to press it. Hours later, in the break room, the story had already turned into corridor whispers. No one spoke loudly. Whoever opened their mouth lowered their voice, looked over their shoulder, checked if their phone was recording by accident. They said it wasn't the first time. That years ago, another employee vanished the same way, in the same elevator. Only back then, the files were misplaced after a renovation. And whoever tried to keep copies ended up transferred far, far away. At the end of the hallway, the receptionist flipped through the visitors list. She said quietly, to whoever wanted to hear, that the missing man had never signed in at the entrance. The visitor badge was never issued. There was no signature in the book. How does someone enter a hospital full of security without leaving a trace? And how do they leave without anyone seeing? The questions hit the wall and came back like a cold echo no one wanted to face head-on. The old-timers said that when the building was founded, they discovered a service staircase walled up inside. When they broke through the wall, they found charred furniture remains and black soot handprints. No one wanted to investigate where those marks came from. They decided to seal it all up again. Years later, the elevator was installed in the same shaft where that staircase used to run. Some say the elevator doesn't just go up or down, it goes backward. Meanwhile, the family kept pushing. They wanted footage. They wanted answers. They wanted anything to prove the missing man wasn't just an invention of people who work too much and sleep too little. They gathered employees in a cramped room, flickering fluorescent light, cold coffee in a styrofoam cup. A projector played, frame by frame, the recording of the last moment, the door opening, the man stepping in, the display blinking a blank number, the doors closing slowly as if savoring that instant. And then, nothing. In the room, a silence so dense you could hear the heartbeat of whoever was holding their breath. A technician suggested checking the cables, running an electrical sweep, calling the elevator manufacturer. Another, more skeptical, said it was all nonsense, probably a recording error, an overlaid image, software glitch. But no one explained why the non-existent floor button lit up that night. No one found it plausible that the pointer stopped at a floor not on the building's plans. A nurse on shift swore she felt the ground tremble slightly when the elevator went up, as if something very heavy was being dragged inside. Later, she went to the equipment room and found the main switch burnt out, like it had suddenly overloaded. The engineer said it was impossible. The system had redundancy. But looking into her eyes, he swallowed his words before trying to argue. In the morgue, the person in charge of the body intake heard about the story and decided to do what no one else did. He pulled up archived death records from the last 20 years. And there, in a forgotten folder, he found a yellowed paper with the same time as the disappearance, only dated a decade earlier. Name crossed out, cause of death undefined. Body never found. The stamp said, file closed. But it was far from truly closed. At the entrance, a woman cried leaning against the wall, saying her husband was at the hospital to visit a relative. No one could find his name on the list. A security guard tried to calm her, saying maybe it was another building, another unit. But she showed a message on her phone. I'm here. Going up now. The time matched exactly when the camera showed the elevator closing for the last time. Meanwhile, on the top floor, an electrical technician checked the control panels. Alone, emergency light flickering, smell of old paint mixed with mold. He was the one who said later, voice choked, that he heard a whisper behind the vent shaft door. A whisper that repeated, once, twice, 3 times, "Come down with me." No one took it seriously until they saw his uniform folded in the locker room hours later. While he himself never showed up to clock out, the cleaning crew refuses to sweep the elevator hallway after 2 in the morning. They say they always find barefoot footprints on the polished floor. Prints that lead nowhere but start exactly at the gap between the steel doors. When they clean, the prints come back the next night, like they're mocking the attempt to erase what doesn't want to be forgotten. The doctors, uncomfortable, started moving critical patients to another wing, away from that elevator. But a new intern, who didn't know the stories, pressed the button without thinking. He disappeared for 10 minutes no one can explain. When the door opened, he was there, pale, eyes staring at nothing, saying just one sentence, "It wasn't my day." After that, he asked to be transferred to another hospital, and never came back to pick up his documents. In the ground floor cafe, everyone pretends they don't know anything. They change the subject when someone mentions the disappearance. But the tension lingers in the air, like the smell of stale disinfectant. Whoever serves the coffee avoids looking at the elevator's reflection in the glass. Because every now and then, the reflection shows the doors open when in reality, they're shut. And inside, a dark silhouette that doesn't match anyone really there. A reporter once tried to investigate the case. She spent an entire night sitting at reception, hidden microphone, camera rolling. The next morning, she vanished too. They found her phone on the waiting bench. The last video recorded was just the sound of the elevator going up and down, non-stop, as if someone inside were testing the patience of whoever dares listen too much. In the director's office, reports pile up, meeting minutes, safety protocols. But deep down, everyone knows none of it helps. There's no lock, password, or protocol that stops the elevator from opening for whoever it chooses. And once inside, no one can promise the doors will open again to the outside world. Some try to give technical explanations. They talk about magnetic fields, structural failures, electrical glitches. But while they talk, they avoid looking at the hallway where the yellow cone warns what no one wants to read: under maintenance. Because deep down, they know there's no maintenance that can fix what isn't mechanical. When the sun sets, the emergency lights start flickering irregularly. The janitor walks by, drags his bucket, lowers the radio's volume, and he mutters, so no one hears, that the elevator doesn't take people away, it keeps them. Keeps memories, broken promises, stories that should never have been remembered. And sometimes, it gives back just a piece. An overly curious new intern decided to open the hidden control panel behind a maintenance door. Inside, he found burnt wires, scribbled records, and a metal hatch. When he called the responsible engineer, the hatch was already closed again. And no one ever found the button that unlocked it. They say the building breathes along with the elevator. Each door that opens is a mouth that sighs. Each flickering light is an eye that closes. Each non-existent floor is a heart beating out of rhythm, calling to whoever dares listen too closely. In the children's wing, a kid drew the elevator on a sheet of paper. She made sure to color everything gray except for one open door, painted black. When they asked what it was, she answered, "The door where he called me from." No one wanted to ask who he was. The drawing vanished days later, along with the patient's file. A private investigator, hired by the family, tried to spend the night there. He sat in front of the door, headphones on, recorder running. Around 3 in the morning, the recording captured banging, as if someone were pounding the elevator ceiling from inside. Then static, and finally, a single word: open. On the last attempt, they sealed the elevator with metal plates, welded the doors shut, But the next morning, the plates were on the floor, bent like damp cardboard, the doors open. And inside, stale, damp air that smelled like old clothes forgotten in a basement. Whoever walks by there quickens their pace, pretends not to see the cone or the handprints on the stainless steel door, pretends not to hear the faint ding echoing at dawn. And whoever stands too long in front of that digital display ends up asking, "Would you step in if the door opened for you?" That week, all the clocks in the building seemed to run a few minutes slow whenever someone stopped in front of the sealed elevator. It was as if time around it bent, pulled by something hungry that lived behind the steel doors. Some said it was collective paranoia. Others didn't sleep anymore, convinced the elevator breathed inside, cradling secrets that should never wake up. In the security room, the night shift turned into punishment. 2 guards who used to joke about the disappearance now took turns. Without exchanging a word, each kept one eye fixed on the screen showing the inert elevator, while the other eye checked the door behind them, as if expecting something to cross the wall. One of them wrote in a notebook a list of times when the call button lit up on its own. Then he tore out the pages, burned them in the bathroom sink, and asked for a transfer before finishing the shift. On the inpatient floor, an elderly woman, who hadn't spoken since a surgery, opened her eyes in the middle of the night and screamed the same name 3 times. No one understood. When the nurse tried to calm her down, she pointed at the ceiling, saying he was calling. She kept repeating that she heard the elevator, that she heard the door open, that he wasn't alone in there. Before sunrise, the woman died, and her file vanished from the drawer where it should have been stored. The doctors began to notice something strange in the reports. Small time lapses. Patients saying they saw people who weren't on the visitors list. Exam times that didn't match the system records. In almost every account, one word repeated, elevator, but each described a different detail. For some, the door opened onto a hallway that didn't exist. For others, there was no light inside, only a dark tunnel whispering promises of answers. A young technician decided to take apart part of the control panel in the dead of night, trying to find where the lie began. When he opened the casing, he found a hidden compartment, a sort of built-in safe, welded in a way no one on the current team had ever seen before. Inside, only a manila envelope sealed with red wax. He didn't have the courage to open it alone. The next day, the envelope was gone from the workbench. The hospital psychologist, called in to deal with the collective fear, listened to everyone. One by one, noted symptoms of anxiety, insomnia, auditory hallucinations. But on a silent night, sitting alone in her office, she ended up dozing off in her chair. She woke up to the elevator bell ringing insistently, as if each ding were a direct call to her chest. On the security monitor, no one was there. Even so, the door opened and closed slowly, as if it were breathing. The maintenance team hired an outside specialist, a man used to handling vertical transport systems in old hospitals. He walked in confident, clipboard in hand, flashlight clipped to his belt. He spent hours inside the machine room, checking every inch of cables, gears, screws, electrical panels. When he left, he dropped the clipboard in the hallway and didn't say a word. He vanished off the map before even presenting the report. What was scribbled on the clipboard was just a crude drawing. A black door, open, and something like a spiral behind it. In the psychiatric ward, a patient who was always sedated repeated one phrase whenever he woke up: "He'll open it again. He'll open it for me." The nurses began to notice that every time the patient said this, the elevator button blinked for a few seconds, even with the shaft's power completely shut off. They called the head of maintenance, but no one wanted to stand close enough to see it up close. In the hospital basement, where the oldest files are kept, a janitor found a moldy folder inside a locked cabinet. Inside, the building's original blueprints, still typewritten. Among the pages, a sketch of the elevators showing 3 shafts, but the building only had 2 in use. The third ended on a level below the basement with a handwritten note. "Do not open." The janitor took the drawing to administration. They told him to forget it, but no one saw when hours later, he was seen entering the service elevator, which was also off limits since the technician's disappearance. Outside, the story began to leak. An online forum posted an anonymous audio from someone claiming to have worked hospital security. The recording had static, but in the background you could hear the elevator going up, stopping, opening, and a muffled breathing, as if the microphone were inside a metal cabinet. The audio was deleted in less than an hour but started circulating in closed groups with the caption, "Listen till the end, if you dare." A late-night delivery man, who knew the building by heart, came in to drop off boxes in the pantry. He walked past the elevator without looking, but something made him stop. He said later he felt a cold draft, as if the door had opened silently. When he looked, he swore he saw someone inside, wearing the uniform of the guard who had vanished days before. But there was no face, only a gray, distorted mass holding the door open like an invitation. The delivery man left the boxes in the hallway and ran in the director's office. The cameras were shut down for a few hours for maintenance. When they came back, files were missing. Someone, without saying who, had copied tapes, made backups and stored them outside the hospital system. A rumor said there were more disappearances, more erased records, more names crossed off the shift lists. But no one showed proof, because every proof ended up inside the elevator, locked behind the door that insisted on opening by itself. A rookie guard tried to break the silence ritual. He called the local press, arranged to meet a reporter in an empty parking lot. He never showed. His car was found days later, parked right in front of the hospital's emergency entrance, engine running. The driver's seat was empty. On the passenger seat, a hospital badge, the name wiped off, the photo torn in half. On the night shift, a medical team heard the fire alarm go off, but found no sign of a fire anywhere. The only place the sensor detected heat was inside the shaft of the sealed elevator. A firefighter was called in. When he opened the safety hatch, he found only the echo of his own respirator hitting the metal ceiling. On the floor, a scorched piece of paper. "It's not over yet." An exhausted doctor, sitting on the edge of the on-call bed, fell asleep after a 36-hour shift. She dreamed of a line of people standing inside the elevator, all staring at the door that wouldn't open. When she woke up, the elevator bell was ringing, insistent, even with no power. And on the monitor screen, a floor no one knew existed blinked in red, -2. A civil engineer who helped build the hospital years ago was found by chance, already old, living in an isolated house. Between sips of watery coffee, he told a reporter that yes, there was an extra slab under the basement, designed to be a fire shelter, but it was never finished. He remembered going down there once, just to see twisted beams, pooled water, and an iron door locked with heavy chains. He said that after that visit, he asked to leave the project. An overly curious pharmacy assistant decided to go down the service stairs to the lowest level. He wanted to prove it was all a myth. When he came back, he was mute. He never spoke again. In his lab coat pocket, he carried a rusty key, but no one ever found out what door it belonged to. The stories multiplied in secret. Every shift had its version. Some said they heard whispers in the air ducts. Others saw shadows crossing empty corridors. Everyone felt a tightness in their chest when they passed the yellow cone that promised maintenance. But no one believed in repairs anymore. In the morgue, an unidentified body was released. Described as a man, average height, unrecognizable face, old burns. On the file, time of entry, same minute the first man vanished in the elevator. In the corpse's hand, a twisted piece of metal, part of a call button. Meanwhile, a question echoed in every restless mind, crossing corridors. breaking the sleep of whoever still had the courage to close their eyes inside that building. If it were you, would you press the button to see what's behind the door? In the week when the story seemed about to be buried, along with protocols and inconclusive reports, the hospital brought in extra security guards. New faces, tight uniforms, clear orders. No one enters the sealed elevator. No one talks about what happened. But fear didn't respect badges or uniforms. All it took was one night too long for even the most skeptical to feel their skin go cold at the sound of a distant ding, even with the power cable ripped out. On the night shift, a new nurse, young, still believing some doors don't open without reason, stopped in front of the elevator on impulse. She would later say, voice trembling, that she was drawn by a low sound, almost a muffled cry. When she pressed her ear to the steel door, she felt something hit back from the other side, 3 rhythmic knocks, as if someone were answering. She didn't press the button. Even so, the display lit up on its own, going up. She collapsed to her knees before she could process what she was seeing. The hallways turned colder that night. The air conditioning was off, yet a cold draft cut through the main hall. Security cameras captured the yellow cone moving on its own, drag day, few inches aside, as if someone wanted to clear the way to the door. When they reviewed the footage the next morning, the recording was black and white, distorted, covered with static at crucial moments. An IT technician, skeptical by nature, decided to install motion sensors and audio recorders inside the elevator shaft. He worked alone until late at night, convinced it could all be explained by an electrical fault or magnetic interference. On the first night, the monitors picked up activity, a deep noise like metal twisting from within. When he went down to check the cables, he never came back. They found his laptop open in the control room with a single line typed, "He wants out." A rumor spread among the older staff that the elevator was never meant to be installed there. In the first drafts of the hospital, that shaft was supposed to be just an emergency exit, but something changed in the plans. Changed because someone pushed for it to be used as vertical transport, connecting floors that weren't open to the public. No one could say who approved the change. The paperwork simply appeared signed, without a legible signature, in a file no one could find again. In the long-term care ward, a terminal patient who hadn't spoken a word in days looked at the nurse and whispered, "He's coming down." Then he closed his eyes, a faint smile on his face, like someone finally finding something long lost. He died before anyone could ask what or who. He saw the janitor, old, bones creaking more than his broom, was seen standing in front of the elevator with a bunch of keys. He turned each one, testing it in the door crack. When someone asked what he was doing, he simply said, "If I don't open it, it opens on its own." Then he went back to scrubbing the floor, as if the answer was enough for anyone who wanted to keep breathing in their dotted reception. The Flowers families left, wilted faster. The digital clock above the main door stopped working every night at 3:17 a.m., the same time the elevator display flickered on its own, showing the impossible number, -3. A forensic engineer, hired to investigate, brought state-of-the-art equipment, thermal scanners, noise sensors. He spent hours in the basement. He took notes, spoke little. On his way back, he looked at the floor plan and said, almost laughing nervously, "There's no physical space for this to exist." No one understood what he meant, until he disappeared too, leaving behind a digital recorder with the sound of a door slamming, ragged breathing, and a deep voice whispering, "Down." A nurse on the midday shift saw, through the ventilation shaft, something she couldn't describe. She said it looked like an improvised room, dim light, damp concrete walls. Inside, something moved slowly, as if it were breathing. She told her supervisor, who wrote it all down in a report. Hours later, the paper vanished from the drawer. When questioned, No one knew anything, but the air in the elevator corridor felt even colder. Management decided to seal the access for good. They hired a team to weld steel plates, block the shaft, cut the cables. The work started at noon, finished at 3 in the morning. At the end, the foreman took a picture of the job. Doors sealed, display off, no chance of opening from the inside. But the next morning, the plates were bent outward, pushed aside as if something much bigger had forced its way through. Nurse brave enough volunteered to go down through the emergency hatch. He strapped on a harness, tied ropes, climbed in through the inspection trapdoor. When he reached the bottom, he found no floor, only a damp tunnel disappearing into darkness. His radio picked up strange noises. First, the sound of metal groaning. Then, a murmur no one could translate. The radio fell. The nurse didn't return. In the break room, someone wrote on the wall with a permanent marker, "It's the door, not the elevator." They tried to erase it, painted over it. The next night, the phrase appeared again, as if it bled black ink through the fresh paint's cracks. The emergency lights began to fail one by one. First at reception, then in the pediatric wing, finally in the elevator corridor. Each flicker lit up a shadow cast on the wall. Too tall, too thin, motionless. When the lights came back, there was no one there. In the parking lot, ambulance drivers said they saw, through the rear-view mirrors, the elevator door open, reflected from inside. But when they turned to look for real, they found only the warning cone and the heavy silence pressing against their chests. A former employee, fired years before, sent an anonymous letter to the new administration. He said the cargo shaft was just the surface. That underneath were tunnels, abandoned chambers, rooms that once served as shelters in another time. And that during renovations, they found bones. They ordered it sealed, but not everything stays locked forever. In the morgue, a technician spent the night cataloging tests when he heard the elevator bell echo, muffled, as if it came from underground. He ran up the fire stairs. When he got there, the door was ajar, and inside, a smell of rust mixed with something damp. He slammed the door shut in a panic, but felt like something got stuck on the outside, scraping its nails on the inner metal. In the pediatric wing, a child drew again. Another black door, another dark tunnel, another silhouette standing inside. When the mother asked what it was, the child answered, "It's the elevator man. He said he wants to play." The drawing disappeared from the patient file 2 days later, when autumn came, bringing winds that made the doors slam shut by themselves. The hospital felt quieter. But it wasn't a peaceful silence, it was a silence of waiting. Night shift workers didn't need coffee to stay awake anymore. Fear was stronger than any insomnia. On the last night before the hospital officially declared the elevator permanently out of service, a nurse heard 3 dull knocks, just like weeks before. She pressed her forehead to the door, crying. Softly, she said she heard a familiar voice asking her to open it. It was the voice of the colleague who vanished in the shaft. She swore it was him. And still, she didn't press the button. In the dead of night, with everything off, a guard looked at the digital display that wasn't supposed to be on. There, a single number glowed, 4, but the hospital only had 3 levels below ground. He took a photo. The next morning, his phone wouldn't turn on anymore. Deep down, those still breathing inside knew it was useless to change locks, seal doors, cut cables. Because what vanished wasn't the elevator. It was the certainty that every closed door hides a world behind it, and sooner or later, it opens for whoever dares to ask. And the question that echoed, cold, among doctors, nurses, janitors, and the curious was always the same, pulsing like the elevator that never rested. Could you turn your back if you saw the door open just for you? Months later, the hospital kept operating as if nothing had ever happened. They changed the hallway layout, painted fresh walls, replaced the floor with vinyl tiles that muffle footsteps and erase traces. where the sealed elevator once stood. There's now a drywall partition, artificial flowers, a colorful safety instructions poster that no one really reads. It's just a disguise, a thin layer of makeup over something that never stopped pulsing down below. The new staff come and go without knowing what's hidden within the walls. But every now and then, some curious soul asks why the wall sometimes trembles at night, why the air turns cold for no reason, why the guard switches shifts early whenever the clock strikes 3:17 a.m. Those who've been there longer just shake their heads, avoid answering, pretend it's a generator issue or wind in the air ducts, but it's not wind, it's breathing. It's a warning. Anyone who stands near that spot too long feels a presence pressing against their back, like a cold hand resting between the shoulder blades. Some say it's paranoia. Others carry a rosary in their lab coat pocket. Everyone stares at the floor. When passing by, never stopping. From time to time, a phone rings at the reception desk in the dead of night. There's no one on the other end. Just the hum of a motor going up, stopping, going up, stopping, as if someone down there were still pressing the button, waiting for an answer. In the admin office, boxes of reports rot unopened. Each file stamped with the same word, closed. But stories never really close. All it would take is a drill, a hammer, a curious soul brave enough to break through the drywall, peel back the flooring, find the shaft still breathing beneath it all. And then, yes, the door would open again. At night, when the hospital falls silent, whoever claims to be brave can get close, press their ear to the wall, feel the vibration of something moving, deep down in the darkness that no official floor plan explains. Whoever gets too close comes back changed. Sometimes they don't come back whole, because the question isn't if the door will open, but when. And for whom. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows. It's not the elevator that swallows people, it's curiosity that opens the door. And inside, whoever enters doesn't always come back the same. Some return, others stay, and some whisper through the cracks, inviting whoever passes late at night, in a lab coat or uniform, too tired to resist. So if one day you walk down an empty hallway, trip over a forgotten caution cone, feel the air turn cold for no reason, hear a muffled ding with no elevator running, remember what was told and what was hidden. Because that door, locked behind partitions, is still breathing. And every breath is a promise that someone will press the button again. And you, would you press it? Wait for the door to open? Would you have the courage to see what's behind it, even knowing that sometimes whoever goes in doesn't come out? If you've stayed with me this far, it's because something inside you wants to know what's on the other side too. So don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because stories like this never really close. They just sleep until someone has the courage to open them again.